so we're all set. Thanks everyone for joining us. So my name is Peter Papadogiannis. I'm the co-founder of Headset Sports, and this is our Return to Play or Return to Sport webinar series, and it's our second part. So the last few months at Headset Sports has been a pretty important topic area for us. We've been digging into in various ways through Instagram, through podcasts, through webinars, and we're just continuing the conversation. We're just going to do it in a different way today. So we have a panel discussion, and we have 4 great panelists. Dr. J and I are going to be the people who are going to be facilitating, and this is an area that isn't really talked about in Return to Play. There's quite a few protocols that you are all well familiar with and undertaking it with your athletes and also on your own. But the mental strength well-being part is one that isn't really talked about. So we're going to be digging into some areas that I think will be very helpful for athletes, for coaches, for administrators, because once again, this area is not really spoken to. So we'll talk about these different areas in much more depth, and we're going to come from different perspectives. In regards to an agenda, we'll go very briefly through introduction. We'll go through headset introduction, then we'll go through the panelist introductions. And then we have 3 different segments that we're going to go through with our 4 panelists. One is getting ready for the return to play. And there's a couple of questions for that segment. Then we're going to talk about managing uncertainty. We have a couple of questions there. And then the final piece, we're going to talk about moving forward or future perspectives. And once again, we have 2 questions. So 3 segments. We'll take about 10 minutes each for each of those segments with 2 questions. Once we are done with those questions, we'll have a wrap-up piece. And then if individuals have questions, they can ask at the very end. With that being said, we do have a chat function within Zoom. So if people who are attending have any questions, feel free to send those out before the very end. And if it fits one of those segments, we'll get to it and we'll add them in to the questions we already have. If it's a question that is one to wait till the very end, we'll wait till the very end, and then we'll give it to our panelists at the very end. So that is how we have our meeting today and structured with our panelists. As mentioned, I'm Peter Papadogiannis, co-founder of Headset. I'm also a practicing sports psych in the Toronto area. I'm also a lecturer at 2 universities and 1 college out here. And I have 3 different private practices that I'm a part of. And this one area that we're talking about today is a constant for the last few months. So I've been talking to coaches, athletes, administrators on the mental health well-being part, and I'm really interested in picking the brains of our panelists and experts today. So Jay, I'm going to turn it over to you for an introduction, and you're going to talk a little bit about Headset before introducing our panelists.
Well, thank you for the introduction. My name is Jason Galea, and I too work in the world of performance enhancement when we're talking to athletes about the mental side of the game. I've had the opportunity to work with some incredible athletes, incredible teams, and one of the things that I've been able to foster is some great relationships with some of the people that we have on our panel today. And one of the things that we'll be talking today is how are we incorporating this mental performance that goes on during the season as we prepare for coming back. And we're going to be asking questions to our panel on what it's like for them as they're working with their athletes and getting their athletes ready to perform at peak position as soon as they come back after this pandemic that we're dealing with. And I know as a person who's headed a sports performance program, what that's like. But we're going to be relying on some of our people today to kind of give some of the today situation that they're dealing with such the unique situation as hand. As a former director of performance at St. Catherine College in San Diego, we looked at all different types of physical as well as mental attributes. And what we're going to be looking at today is how can we help our athletes and our programs take the situation at hand and not use it as a stumbling block, but almost as that launch pad to take off for success. And this is where we think that Headset's going to be able to help us with that. So for those who may be new to Headset and Headset Sports, Headset is a training platform that helps athletes from the perspective of sports psychologists, coaches, and athletes combined. Meaning we brought together a collaboration of these people who are involved in the mental side of sport as well as performance sport, talk about what do athletes really need and how can we give them more control over their game and over all the things that they might be dealing with internally, but do it in a way where it's a customized program for their specific needs. But on top of that, we created something that allows a fluid motion for this athlete to transition from every element of their season. So what happens for the athlete that is starting? We've got that starting athlete who is dealing with all the nerves and anxiety of being that starter, and pressure is on him or her shoulder. But at some point throughout the season, something happens. An injury happens, a setback happens, team might not be doing as well as we expected. Now, the fear, anxiety, worries that we have, stresses, that shifts. But what if there's an injury? What if something else happens where maybe a new coach comes in and now things have been changed? This is where Headset comes in as a customized program for each individual athlete and curtails what that athlete may need at that point in time to help them overcome what might be before them. From there, with our artificial intelligence, we're able to create reports that give coaches an overview of what's going on in that locker room without violating any kind of confidentiality of what that athlete might be sharing. And this is the power of Headset Sports. And we're so excited to be able to share this, especially with what we're dealing with right now. So our panelists, Peter, I'll throw it over to you to introduce our couple panelists that we have.
Yeah, so we have 4 panelists today, and all of our panelists bring great expertise in regards to their sport that they're involved with or sports that they're involved with, but they are undertaking this return to play. So we're happy to have everyone. Our first panelist is Adam Asenza. So Adam is a professional mixed martial artist. He trains at the Burlington Training Center that's very close to Toronto, Canada. He has a very interesting perspective as that he is a highly competitive athlete in his field, but he's also a strength and conditioning coach and therapist. So we love that Adam is here, and we're happy that he is here with us today because he can bring the athlete perspective, but he also has the coach perspective. As mentioned, he's a professional mixed martial artist, but was also, before transitioning to MMA, was a former competitive gymnast. And he's also the founder and creator of the MPC fitness app that we'll talk about a little bit later on today. Our second panelist is Cyprian McFarlane. Cyprian is a developer of young soccer players. He's been in soccer for over 20 years. He's currently the technical director at Brams United Girls Soccer, that's close to Toronto as well. He oversees all the development for coaches and athletes. He's also the owner-operator of McFarlane Athletic Recruiting, which helps athletes and their families find athletic scholarships in the US and Canada. Jay, if you want to introduce our next panelist.
One of the people that I'm excited to introduce that's on our panel today is Mr. Kelly Dullard. And Kelly is the Associate Athletic Director at Mater Dei High School, a very big high school here in Southern California with a tremendous athletic background and prominence. If you know anything about Mater Dei, you know about their sports. He's also the head coach for their girls swimming program, and he does all kinds of coordinating of athletic operations. He's also been the varsity tennis coach. So we not only have a person who's coaching elite athletes at the high school level, but we have someone who's working in that athletic director position, dealing hands-on with a lot of the issues that are going on with transitioning back to play for high school, but not just high school sports, elite high school sports, because that's what their program is made of. Our second panelist dealing with that athletic program end is Mr. Steve Sanfilippo. Steve is the Assistant Athletic Director at Milwaukee School of Engineering. He's also their head baseball coach. And he is a guy that is not only dealing with working with athletes, keeping them focused, putting a winning product out there, winning as coach in baseball at MSOE, not a big deal. But at the same time is dealing with how do we put together plans for our athletes to jump back in to the sport itself that they participate and represent the Raiders for. It's also important to know that Steve's position is a unique one in that his school is a heavy engineering school. So not only are they knocking out great athletes that move on to major league sports, Steve's had a handful of them that have gone on to be first round draft picks in Major League Baseball, but they're also coming from a very intense academic environment because over 90% of them are studying engineering. So very unique perspectives from some very unique people with some incredible backgrounds that we have here that I think are going to be fantastic for us. So fellas, again, thank you for being here and talking to us. And I think right off the hopper, Adam, I want to throw you under the bus here, buddy. And I want to ask you, what has this experience been like for you as a trainer and program person running a high elite gym with getting people to get ready to get back into it again? What's it been like for you?
It's been weird, that's for sure. I have obviously my athletes, and I have a lot of my clients that they do come to my gym, but then they also use my online fitness app as well. So it could be kind of nice to kind of keep track of them that way. But I'm finding something unique. I get my athletes come back in, and there's two people that come in. There's the person that's out of shape, that maybe their sport's been canceled, they've kind of been sitting on their butt, and they're super undertrained. And then I have the other athletes that tried to keep up to par, tried to stay in shape, and then maybe they were overreaching, maybe COVID stressed them out because they couldn't leave the house, all those unique things. And they're coming back super fatigued and a little bit burnt out, right? So I'm finding that, kind of a weird situation because I got my guys, some of them I have to kind of re-ramp them up, and the other guys I got to actually pull them off and pull them back. And then the regular clientele seems to be really confused as well. So it's every single situation is very unique, and you got to approach it with a unique set of tools. So
I'm interested in asking you, Kelly, what things have been like for you, because now you're dealing with the high school kids, and you might want to touch a little bit on state of California, because some people listening today who are not familiar with what's going on in California and those regulations, but you have a bit of a different problem that you're dealing with.
Yeah, so similar to Adam, it's been weird. I was talking earlier, we're gearing up here to start our off-season training across the board for those programs that want to on Monday. Earlier in the summer, about a month ago, we did have summer camps running across the board. Of course, there were guidelines put in place with strict social distancing, so things did look different. And then we got shut down. So now we're back about a month later, ready for round two. There's been a lot of time that has passed, with our coaches and their athletes where they haven't seen them. Our athletes are, kind of doing their own thing to stay in shape. Even though we've provided some, Zoom workouts, basic strength and conditioning exercises for our teams to do for our athletes, in hopes to keep them kind of with it and focused on, I'm still an athlete, still trying to earn a scholarship or stay in shape, whatever level they might be. So there's been a lot of struggles there, trying to keep everything organized and hold everyone accountable to their training. I would say at the end of the day, a lot of our athletes, they're going to struggle when they return to play. So, kind of a challenge we're going to face is, making sure no one tries to do it all in one day or 1 week. There's going to be a gradual, reintroduction to our athletic programs and our training, especially on the strength and conditioning side.
That's huge. I mean, I'm wondering on how you're able to keep people motivated to do all this stuff when there's such uncertainty, right? It's got to be a challenge.
Yeah, and I think everyone's raring to go. The feedback I hear from our parents and my athletes as well, and talking to other coaches, the kids, they want to be back. They're ready to go, but it's the uncertainty part that it's demoralizing. We send out information, hey, we're starting summer camp, 2 weeks later get shut down. For these kids, these athletes, that's a huge blow to their mental health and their physical health. So again, we're gearing up for Monday, and I hope we can sustain it longer this time, so that we don't shut down again and kind of go through the whole process. So I think just having a plan ready to be put into motion whenever you get the clearance to start, that's a key for us, and that's something we focused on during this downtime.
Well, an interesting perspective that I'm looking to throw at you, Steve, is in your role, I know that you've got a lot of coaches that report to you. And I'm wondering, on the perspective of the coaches, like, what are you going through right now in terms of managing your staff? How does that go?
I think managing our staff, I mean, it changes every day. Like for us, right now it's the testing. That's the big thing that's hitting NCAA. And the NCAA with us, they said to us, listen, it's kind of, here's our guidelines. This is what we hope that you're going to do. But that doesn't mean, with pushing back the fall sports and the winter sports after January 1, we're still in non-trad. There's sports that are high risk. So the high risk sports like the hockeys and the basketballs, volleyballs, I believe volleyball's a high risk. They're gonna like Kelly just said, just have a plan. So when it's ready to go. But for like a tennis and golf, nothing's changed for them. So they're going. So those coaches are going here. For us, for baseball, lacrosse, the non-trad fall sports, we're traditionally we have a fall. Instead of having 18 or 19 weeks in a season, we have 114 days. So we're going to go 20 days in the fall. But I just got off the phone with the athletic director this morning saying it's changed for the last 3 days. It's been different.
Yeah.
Since Friday's message from Monday's message to this morning's message, it's been completely different. From we're going to pool test. And then that went bye-bye. And then, we got a new test that's $95 instead of $150. But we can only do that. Their test results don't get back for 2 weeks.
Right.
We can't sit on test results for 2 weeks and not do anything. So I think everyone's scrambling. For me, assistant coaches, before I had to go run an errand, I said, go find masks. We're going to buy them. And they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, we're buying 50 masks for all of our guys. So when we start practicing, we have the social distancing, we have everything. Like this Geico Baseball City Series, they're coming in and doing it all for us. So we're just having a big report written up for us. And every report from all the guidelines that they have to all that stuff, that's all going to be what we're going to implement into what our college team's going to be doing starting September 14th. So that's kind of where we're at. But motivating coaches are, again, sitting in the weeds having their plans, making sure that all the orders and all their uniforms are ordered and all the stuff that you don't want to do regularly. You just get that done now, and then you're just waiting for us to have the gun go off and start running. So that's where we're at.
Yeah. I guess it's got to be so challenging to have to be so fluid with everything, right? And because you also have to have that worry that if, I don't know, there's an audit of some sort as to how you're doing what you're doing. You're
Right.
not looked at as just a coach now. You're being looked at as a whole program, a whole facility, right? So a little bit of pressure there.
Yeah, I mean, I think, at the end of the day, what all of us have worked in sports. I think the thing at the end of the day for me is to make sure that our student athletes are comfortable.
Yeah.
That's my main goal. Just make them comfortable. If they don't want to participate because they got to take a COVID test, then they don't participate right now. But also give them alternatives to train in smaller groups, or alternatives to be able to talk to guys like you that have the mental health side. That's like the next step that I have where, we might be able to practice September 14th, but let's say the 16th, I got a guy that has 140 degree and is coughing everywhere. Well, does that shut down everyone? And how is that mentally toll on everyone? So I have to have a plan in place where there's a couple professionals that I've worked with the Milwaukee Brewers that said, hey, here's some literature for your guys to get guys to read, because they're sitting in the same boat. Like some of their players go down with COVID. Well, there was a protocol for those guys and the mental health for those guys. So I've already started mulling over those situations that are going to happen. It's not, fellas, it's not when we're going to get it. It's not if we're going to get it, it's when we're going to get it at this point. And it's just to be able to weather the storm and be able to make sure that one person's not holding back 30 guys or whatever that case may be. That's the big thing for us.
Yeah, yeah. I'm curious to know, Sip, you're in the world of soccer. And I'm wondering what have been maybe the biggest challenges that athletes and coaches are dealing with in your world. Because I just heard something yesterday from a colleague that went like this. In the world of USA Soccer, kids can go out and work on skills, but they're not allowed to pass the ball to each other. Is this happening in your world up north as well?
No, I guess the thing with us in Ontario and in different parts of the province as well, the government was very conservative with how they opened different parts of the province. So we were in one region that was one of the last to open or get to the first phase. So I guess part of it, we had the advantage of seeing what was going on in other parts of the province and how they were moving into what they call soccer phase 1. I think that the biggest challenges for us as a youth club has been education, trying to decipher the information that comes from the provincial body to put our return to play program together. But also then we are then challenged with following the provincial guidelines and then following the city or regional guidelines as well. So even sometimes different parts of the province could have different guidelines that they're following based on whatever their city would allow. For instance, on our fields, it didn't matter what size fields, you were limited to 10 individuals. So it was 9 athletes and 1 coach for the entire field. So part of it was the education, and I guess the other challenge was getting the parents to feel comfortable. You know, having through webinars and the information, and then getting them to understand all of these different rules in terms of they come in and they have to drop off at a certain point. They come in, they have to do a health check every day. We have to stagger schedules, and then after they have to leave at a different point. So all of those things there to make sure that, you know, you've got your ducks in a row, because, you know, parents are very concerned, and making sure that, you know, if they're watching, that, you know, you're following all the protocols to make sure that they feel safe and make sure it's a safe place for them to send their kids.
You guys bring up some fantastic points, because I'll tell you some of the chaos that I've had a chance to experience down here in California is that different facilities, different programs are setting different parameters. So for example, Sip, you bring up the point of you can only have maybe 10 kids on a field and a coach. Well, we have facilities down here which are in the exact same sport, but one facility will say you can have 20 kids out there and 2 coaches. Right down the street, you'll find someone who's in the exact same sport, exact same kind of facility, and they'll say, no, you can have 25 and 5 coaches. Well, which is it? And Flip, as you mentioned too, that safety aspect, I've seen programs out here that have called me for my help to ask, how can we better be communicating with our parents, where they have scenarios where a kid might be coming to a camp, because in California you can do camps, not clinics or practices, camps. And you'll have a scenario where you might only have 10 kids that come to a camp. And at the end of the night, 2 will come up to the instructor, the coach, whoever it may be, and say, that was great, thanks for everything, but we're not going to come back. It's too crowded. And what do you do at that point?
Jay, if I could ask, are that, you know, in the U.S., is it determined by your region or your city or your area, or is it the facility or the organization that decides? Does anybody sort of mandate or provide guidelines?
I mean, for Wisconsin, it's there's like, it's by county. So there's the state, and then they said all masks, but there's some counties like Waukesha County. Um, it's a free for all, fellas. I mean, on May 30th, they had a Memorial Day tournament with 80 plus teams. No one in masks. These that are kind of what you're saying: 10 kids, one coach, or 9 kids, one coach. It's just whatever organization it is. The biggest thing is, I think I talked to Dr. Jason about this, was like, there's guidelines, but who's actually enforcing these guidelines? And that's where the organizations or the sports organizations have to step in and be like, we are serious about this, and these are their precautions and guidelines that we're gonna have. And if you don't want to play by our guidelines, go down there. There's another club that you can go and suit your needs. So that's kind of where we're at right now, especially in our region. I mean, they weren't going to allow us, like the state of Illinois. Just talked to a worker down here on the field. He said, I can't stay 24 hours in the state of Wisconsin, or I have to confine myself for 14 days. So, but he's like, so I can drive back and forth an hour and a half each day. Then I don't have to do that.
Wow.
So that's what we're up against.
Could we, and this might be a nice transition for us to like the segment number 2 is managing uncertainty. And it sounds like for all of our sports and all of the places that we're in North America, it's challenging, right? And it changes every single day. But a question for our segment 2 are what strategies have you and your staff put in place for your athletes, coaches, and what impact kind of has it had on performance? And maybe we'll go in the same order as we did for segment 1. So Adam, if you can start us off with any strategies that you guys have put in place at BTC.
Yeah, so basically we've been kind of trying to compartmentalize, like, you know, the situation with each individual athlete. So for example, I'll go back to, like I said, I had a large number of guys that were undertrained and a large number of guys, depending on the sport, that were actually overtrained. So basically we just kind of set a return to play plan that, you know, a little bit of, for the guys that were undertrained, you know, we did some basics and got them back up to par within 2 to 4 weeks. And we had them moving in increments of every 2 weeks. We would adjust kind of their training and their plan. And, you know, if we needed to take a step back from there, or if there was another issue, we would address that. The guys that were overtrained, we did the same thing, but, you know, we made sure that they got their rest in, and, you know, just to kind of keep them still conditioned while not overdoing it. You know, we had them basically doing 2 weeks of a little bit higher intensity training and 2 weeks of a little bit lower intensity training. The thing is, in Ontario, it's not as bad. Obviously, we still have to be aware. We have to follow all the rules and legislations and whatnot. Like, you know, we're taking temperatures on everybody, but it's a matter of just keeping these guys mentally and mentally positive, if anything, you know, like especially a lot of the younger guys, they're so frustrated with the situation. They don't even know what to make of it. So I find that, like, you know, keeping in contact with them and talking to them a little more often than I would normally do, more about how they're doing in general than about their sport and their training, seem to, you know, pay a lot of dividends, you know, and they're starting to kind of pick back up again, you know, in their spirits.
Yeah, and it sounds like putting them as individuals and understanding them as individuals, but also putting them into groups, lumping them together to be able to understand what their needs are has been pretty helpful for you all over there.
We also have, we have something where we have a PSO with Wacko Sport Canada. So what we've done is we've actually designated 10 people to a social circle. So we have everybody fill out a form, and there are 10 people that they're allowed to either train with or do drills with or whatnot, depending if it's combative or it's, you know, whatever, strength conditioning. And, you know, they stick with those 10 people. So if there ever is an issue, you know, we can play back and reach out to all the people that had contact with that one athlete. So I find that those little groups, everybody's starting to feel a little bit more normal as well, right?
Very nice. Yeah, very nice. Maybe we'll transition, Kelly, over to you. For your group and a little bit younger, those high school kids, have you found some strategies that have been successful with you and your groups, with your teams?
Yeah, so I'll talk from the coaching perspective first. So the good thing about being a swim coach in Southern California is there's a lot of pools. A lot of these kids have community pools and things like that. So as a coach, I've just really, took the extra effort to communicate a little bit more than I normally have, maybe twice a week versus once a week, and send them some workouts they can do in the pool at home if they had access, and some other things that they can do to stay in shape that help them feel connected to the program and not totally isolated, kind of from everything that they've done normally. From the administrative side with all our programs, we worked hard to kind of put our own guidelines into place for our other sport programs so that when they could return, our athletes know what to expect, kind of some of the things that they've been doing, in addition to encouraging our coaches to communicate with their programs in a similar way, just to keep everyone involved and engaged. The biggest challenge for me is I remember the day we all left and, quarantine kind of started, school got canceled. I saw my team on the pool deck and they were like, "Coach, we'll see you whenever," and I really haven't seen them since then, minus that 2 week in the summertime. So to me, the biggest challenge or the strategy put in place for those challenges was just communication and taking the time to, either give them a call or send them an email or give them something specific that they can do, to stay involved and stay healthy, in shape, and all those things.
It really sounds like the personal side that you guys are talking about has gone a long, long way. Just making the connection, feeling that the athlete is heard, that they're still connected to their teammates, to the school, if they're affiliated with the school or gym. So it sounds like that's been a common thread for you all.
Yeah, and we've done a lot of Zoom team meetings, with each head coach would kind of facilitate that on their own, but we've gotten a lot of good feedback. We've posted strength and conditioning exercises on our Instagram with our strength coaches, so that they're scrolling through their news feed. Oh, I got a new exercise, something, or a reminder, something they can do at home, which is easy. As many high-level athletes as we have, we also have a lot of, just your average athletes too. So it's important to keep everyone, engaged. That's our main goal and purpose right now, until we can really start training again.
Good point.
And Sip, I know your group at Rams United have used Zoom and social media to your benefit.
Yeah, I think like everybody, I don't know. I thought it was only going to be maybe, 4 weeks, maybe 6 weeks, right? When we started doing our planning, and then, never did I imagine that it would have been 16 weeks that, we had to, keep kids motivated without any, social interaction. So a big part of my strategy was I called it virtual practice. For every team, we had religiously 2 Zoom meetings every single week, where, for girls, it's very social. So I didn't really focus too much on tactics and game video and things like that. It was a lot of get to know you. I designed a team Jeopardy game where, the kids would play against the coaches just to sort of keep them motivated. That, sharing, getting to know each other, a lot of those things that we just take for granted, or we don't necessarily invest the same amount of time in a regular environment, right? So it gave us that opportunity. So that's my big strategy, was to make sure that they stay socially connected. Because I had a big concern, of course, I'm not an expert in the field, but what would be the psychological impact on these kids of not being able to interact and see their friends for however many months? So, like I said, that was my my biggest concern. And I guess same thing with regards to I'm not sure of the long-term impact that it will have, and also concerned about what happens when they go back to school, or if there's a second wave that has to shut down again, right? Where now these kids have just got out to see their friends, so on and so forth, and then we've got to go back, like, I think Kelly was mentioning, and you got to get a lockdown and you got to go back to square one. So basically starting from scratch for all of this work that you've done up to that point.
Right.
Good point. Very good point.
It sounds like there's been a lot of planning for you all, just getting ready for scenarios, right? And Steve, you mentioned that in segment 1, right? A lot of planning for you guys in coming back with not knowing what's going to go on a day, a week, or a month from now? Has there anything that's been helpful for you and the coaches in regards to just that planning part?
I think the helpful is everyone's in the same boat. You know, there's not a real playbook for this. For baseball, it's just much different for baseball because we're a social distance sport. So I mean, we've had open field, I'll say, you know, open gym, but we had open field where we had a lot of pro guys here. I mean, Jared Kelenic from the Mariners organization was here hitting, and he was 6th pick overall in the 2017 draft. You got Gavin Lux, who is the second baseman for the Dodgers. He was here. And then you got a bunch of college guys from all over because we were really the only park that was kind of open, but we were doing the social distancing and going through all the guidelines. So we haven't, like, for baseball wise, we didn't really ever stop. It was just, we had to, you know, when we were done hitting the balls, we send those balls over here and we wipe those down and we bring the new balls in, and, you know, just cleaning methods and different things that we can do. Like if there was, you know, if we ever played live games, we would only have to call one umpire, which saved on money. But he would go behind home, or would go behind the mound instead of behind the plate. So I think we're all in the same boat. I think it was Adam that said it, the positivity. It's like you can't have a Zoom call and be negative in front of your guys, because they're going to get a little glimpse of that, and then it's going to grow, and now it manifests, and now you got a problem. So it's my biggest thing is making sure that I stay positive with my guys. I've been giving them projects to do, like at the field, because we got a brand new field. So they come by and they clean out something, like this year was a uniform year. So I said, hey, I don't care what we wear. I just want to win baseball games. You can pick the hats, you can pick the uniforms, you can pick everything. Just send it to me. So there's been a lot of discussion there and Zoom calls there. So just trying different ways where not only are they trying to talk baseball, but they're talking about stuff that has to do with the upcoming season. Stay positive.
Yeah, I like that. I like that positivity, forward thinking, that attitude piece that you've all done so well. Hey, before we'll transition to segment number 3, any other guys strategies? Some strategies that kind of put out there before that have worked for you all? If not,
the one thing that I might want to ask, and and this is maybe a question at the end, I should have hit the chat button, but you know, I don't know how your student athletes, they have to go through a numerous paperwork in order to try out and do all that stuff, right? The thing that got brought up to me on Monday morning was, so we have them sign a sickle cell trait, right? They have to do a test for sickle cell, and they sign off on that, and that's deadly. So someone said, well, why don't we have them sign off on COVID too? And I would like to get some of, like, for us, why are we testing the kids when they get on campus? Why are we not having them test with their own doctors off campus? Because if they are positive before they get here, instead of getting here, being around the kids and then getting tested, there's no good way of doing this. But like the sickle cell, like, why do we have them? It's okay for them to sign off on that, but it's not okay to sign off on COVID. That's kind of the question that I have for the group.
Well, I'll throw my 2 cents in, and I think it comes back to something that I believe you mentioned earlier, and that's we're the governing bodies to help with the direction of this, right? And you know, Kelly, I'm going to throw you in the mix as well, because you're dealing with, you know, the state of California, and you're dealing with a school of your own that's got a lot of eyes on it. But from some of my experience, and I'd love to get your insight on this too, because it could help with Steve's question, I'm seeing that there's maybe an oversight of the governor, right? So what I'm being told in a lot of other sports is that, like in soccer, lacrosse, hockey, basketball, they're going to come out with a structure of this is what you should do to come back and play. But then they throw it right back onto the state. And from there, I'm not too sure how that gets deciphered. That's where it seems like the inmates are running the show. Are you noticing the same thing, Kelly?
Yeah, my opinion on it, I think I don't think anyone's really taken ownership of oversight and kind of enforcement on a lot of things. So I think if a high school around here decided to purchase the test so that we can test our students, that'd be fine. But I think there's a lack of testing, at least in California. I've heard of a lot of scenarios where people want to get tested, but they don't have symptoms, so they're being told they can't get tested. So I think that might play into kind of part of it until, there's some kind of accessibility for, hey, so-and-so organization requested I, pass a COVID test before returning to work. I don't think that really exists yet in California, or at least it's not organized. But that's my opinion or perspective.
I think we have to be very careful with asking someone if they've been tested for COVID and they've had it, because again, HIPAA, like there's a line drawn in the stand there that we can't ask kids health questions. That's why we got sports medicine people. That's why we got athletic trainers to keep the coaches out of it. So I've been very, very, like I found out from a couple of my players that a couple of our guys on our team got it like in April. And it's like for them, it's like good for them. They got it. They're good to go. Let's play. But for others, it's like, okay, our guys going to feel uncomfortable around those guys now, but I can't ask those questions because they're through HIPAA and through the sports medicine people that we've talked to. They're like, coaches, we just want you to speak positivity and make sure that when we can play, you're ready to go. And that's where we're at.
Wow.
Yeah, and it sounds like just relying on that staff that you have for their expertise. It sounds like they're doing that too, right? Like you guys coach, you guys play, and then if something does happen, we'll come in. It's just the hope that they'll come in and do their work and job. But yeah, it's challenging, especially for the confidentiality piece that you mentioned. Really tough.
Like we're relying on social responsibility, right? And for that alone, I think of you, Adam. If you've got people in your facility that are not being socially responsible and they're coming in and they're training and they're sharing a mat and maybe they're sparring and they know that they're positive, I mean, that puts you in a real bad spot.
Yeah, definitely. That's why we try to take every precaution possible. We have the sign off even online because we have all our bookings online right now. And then when they come in, anybody we have a locked door. So they ring the doorbell, front desk person will go, put them through the ringer as much as we can, ask them all the questions, check temperature, you name it, right? So we're just trying to minimize that any way possible, just to be allowed to keep training.
Well, to segue in from what you just said, I think that Sip, you brought up a perfect question, or a perfect point, I should say, that segues right into segment 3 here for us. And we're talking about the long-term effects of how people are feeling. We don't know, even though we're trying to stay positive, like Steve had said earlier, we're trying to keep things as positive with our athletes as well. And I guess the question would be, if you could track something in your mental health or mental well-being for your team that would help them stay on track for future competition, how valuable would that be for you?
Oh, it would be amazing. I feel like, one of the strategies that I use for a lot of my athletes and myself is reframing, right? Like depending on how you're feeling in the situation, we're always trying to reframe so you have a better outlook at the situation so you don't feel trapped and you have options. And, that only comes from figuring out how you feel about it at that time, right? So if you have something to track it, I think that would be very valuable.
Yeah. Sip, you kind of talked about the long range focus of how is it going to be for my athletes down the road. So how might you see being able to track the mental health well-being of your athletes to maybe develop that? Could that be something that could help you?
Yeah, I think part of the fascinating thing is that the level of engagement from some of the athletes throughout this. We've had the Zoom calls, we've had virtual training. And, just you have some kids that are very engaged and they participate a lot, and other ones that have just sort of dropped off the face of the earth, right? And, that motivation or that interest or that level of engagement, how long will it stay for the ones that, have been participating, but more concerning for the ones that haven't. And I guess in that, framework, whether or not we're going to lose some of those athletes for the upcoming season, or whether we're going to retain them.
So in moving things forward here, Kelly, I want to ask you, where do you see the ability to track one's mental strengths as maybe having a benefit for you and your athletes as you move forward? Do you see that being a benefit for something like
Yeah,
running?
absolutely. I would see even on a normal year, pre-COVID as well, there's a lot of times, there's a lot going on while you're coaching. There's a lot of things to manage, especially at, the high school level and at a school like Mater Dei, so it's easy to miss, hints that your athletes might be giving you, or miss some, social cues, body language type of things. So being able to kind of get an overall picture of, it just might be surprising to see what you might find, and will help you kind of navigate, moving forward, how you approach your team or what your team needs specifically, whether it's in the short term or the long term. It'll help you kind of, map out your season or future seasons.
Yeah, and I love what you say for future seasons, and I think this is where I come to you, Steve, because I think of you and the ability to forecast not only how we get back to play, but what the future for some of your athletes is like.
The future, like for me, like today, I said to the athletic director again, I said, you give me the direction, because it changes. He's in those high level meetings where I get to hear about it 2 meetings afterwards. So it's one of those things where it's like, if you want me to try to get non-conference games here and push the envelope and try to get us to play so it's easier for the other sports in October, November to play, I'll do whatever I can, because I feel comfortable as a coach in the social distancing part with the masks. I feel comfortable that we can still do it and still be safe. But I think, at the end of the day, you got to understand that we got to make sure that our student athletes want to be here to do this. And to motivate them, you were saying, like, someone just drops off the face of the earth. Well, those are the guys that team captains should be calling and being like, hey, man, like, I know coach might have called you, but we're concerned about you. We really love you, love to be part of the team. So, like, I try to communicate not only through my coaches, but through my team captains, because those guys can relate to each other a lot better than a 38-year-old calling a 19-year-old going, hey, buddy, let's get going here. Like, no, like, those guys are going to invite them to go play video games together. Then they get comfortable. Now they're talking about their workouts. Now the next day he's working out with them and he can get back into that routine. But just like anything else, it's just the comfort level, and then just taking direction from the people above you. Like, I can only do so much. I can only push the envelope so long. And I'll do everything that I feel that's right to keep my staff, my players safe. I'll do whatever it takes.
And I think this brings us to a perfect segue here, right? Because, again, one of the things I know that you know well, and as well as all of you on our panel today, is one of the things that we provide with Headset is the ability to give that overview of what's going on in that locker room, so that you can be able to see how each one of your athletes is doing. So if you do have that drop off of that guy that kind of, ghosts, you can implement what you're talking about, Steve. And that's putting some of your leadership in play to say, hey, I think we need to reach out to so-and-so because I haven't seen them active for a while.
Yeah. And just to add to it, it really does seem like it's a team approach. And it has been for you all, right? This is not it's been probably since the beginning of your coaching, but it seems like now is a little bit different. Yeah. Right? That it really is trying to make those connections, trying to be able to, with those connections, really broaden it. And it really feels like the athlete is being treated as a human being as well as an athlete, right? It's a connection piece that's so important. And as I'm hearing from you all, you guys are busy, like with so many different parts to your coaching, but all the additional things. Like you guys are busy every year in regards to the work that you do, but it seems like now with some of the challenges, it's even more challenging and complicated. And being able to have support within the team and outside of the team, it seems like it's really been something that you've had to plan for.
Totally. And in many ways, that's what I think is one of the great benefits of our program for the coaches and the programs that are using it. Once they put it into inception, program more or less runs itself. And then it provides our coaches and our directors who are using it with the opportunity to just be able to do a quick overview and glance, see how things are going. And it's one of the best compliments that we've gotten from a professional coach only a few months ago that said, and in a unique way, one of the things I love most about your program is I don't have to do anything. So I took that as a really weird compliment, but at these times, hearing what you guys have to go through, who are right in the mix, right in the fire, dealing with not just the athlete, but you're dealing with coaches, you're dealing with parents, worried people about if there's even going to be a season. This is where I think we create such a huge need for programs.
And it's up to those athletes to be motivated to do it, but the system allows them to have support along the way, and it doesn't have to come from the coach. It comes from the system itself.
Right.
That's what the individual dashboard, that is confidential. The athlete can do their work and to really understand what their needs are, because as you mentioned, Jay, it's customizable. So if you're lower in this area of mental skills or sports psych, then we can kind of up that when there is a need for it, right? So that's the important part about the individual one. And we also, with the data, we're able to support the team as well and take an overview or a snapshot at various times during the month to understand where may the team as a whole maybe need some additional support. And it could be the sports psych, it could be the coach, it could be the leaders within the clubhouse or the field or pitch or at the training facility to really kind of push that individual and team component. So definitely could be a solution for athletes and coaches and sports teams as they come back to returning to play.
You know, but I still pull on that point that Steve made, which is such a huge one. And that's, you know, if I could see as a coach that one of my athletes is just not responding, just not, you know, doing their wows each week, something's missing, something's off, and I know that there's something going on with that athlete, then I can start leaning on my leadership to help out with that, right? But if I don't know, I don't know. And here's where we get a chance to know what's going on with your athlete. And sure, you're right. It's all in the athlete's hands to do. It's his or her responsibility. But if we could have more eyes on the situation, I don't know of any coach that wouldn't want to help or wouldn't try to help. And again, I think Steve's example is a great one. And I know that Kelly brought it up as well, of having their coaches be more involved with their athletes one-on-one and developing that rapport. I think it's huge.
And guys, you're doing fantastic work. Really, we got a couple minutes left and we're going to wrap things up, but you guys are all doing some really good work under challenging times. Any final pieces to bring forward before we wrap up in regards to, it could be strategies or the mental health well-being piece?
Personally, I think it's important to just stay positive, make sure you have a plan for the ever-changing circumstances, as hard as that might be. But, you know, just kind of accept it, and, you know, we're going to get through it at the end of the day. It's not, you know, sports will be back. So just staying patient and positive. I think that's the key here.
But also, just to add to Kelly, what you mentioned, which is so great, is that you still got to acknowledge it, right? It's frustrating for everyone, right? I can imagine you guys coming back and then being off and coming back and not knowing, like, people are going to be frustrated. They don't know what exactly, including yourself and everyone else at Mater Day too, that you're all in it together, right? But trying to reframe it. Adam, you mentioned that, keeping a positive attitude and supporting each other, right? There's a time where that support, be it face-to-face or continue through Zoom or a hybrid, I think is so important for for that mental health well-being. And we'll find out as time goes on what impact it has. But I think a lot of what you guys have in place already will really help with that transition and that long-term return to playing performance, which is inevitably where all of us want to get to.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Hey, before we wrap things up, and we'll go to questions if there are any. I mentioned earlier when introducing Adam, he's a part of the MPC app, so it's a fitness and nutrition app for competitive athletes and exercisers. So on this PowerPoint slide, it's on Google Play, it's on the App Store. You can find it at mathperform.ca. If you put in Headset, you can get a 40% off of the program as well. So great program. Athletes through Headset have been using it. And in regards to that physical fitness piece and return to play and nutrition has been a real great help to us. So if people want to check it out, it really is something to add to your training, return to play. And then also, I introduced Sip earlier on, and he's got his own business for athletic recruiting called McFarland Athletic Recruiting Services. You can check him out. We have his website here and also his email address, right? So that info@sportscholarships.ca. So if you have a chance and want to talk to him about scholarships for future years, including this year, please do. And he offers a great service for scholarships on top of the technical pieces and sport coding pieces for Brams United. So yeah, we got about a minute left. I'm not sure if there are any questions that we have from our listeners, Jay.
Well, I have one question myself, and it's kind of popped up as well, and that is, do we find that coaches now have to work more closely together with competing programs because of what we're dealing with? So I'm wondering, Steve, like, do you find yourself?
Yeah. What we're doing right now is because we don't know if we're going to have conference games or whatever, but our athletic director, we had an idea in one of our groups that said, okay, what's the 4 closest schools that we have? And it's MSOE, Concordia of Mequon, CUW, WLC, and Edgewood. So they're within an hour of each other. So we've been talking about pool testing. There's like open Zoom calls daily between us to try to find a way that we can play non-conference games or just keep the spirit of the athlete up by having competitions. You have to put something on the calendar. It's just like, if I have a bunch of work, like I have this big work week, the last 3 weeks I've had camp, I've had finished my master's, and now I got this Geico thing. But after this, I'm going up north fishing. Well, that one date, that's what I'm working for. I'm working to get all the way through these last 3 weeks so I can go fishing. So I think that's the mentality that we're trying to give our student athletes across the board is, what can you look forward to? So that's kind of where we're at.
Competition piece, Steve. I like that. That's that spirit. Looking forward to that spirit of competition.
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
Is awesome. Oh, well said.
Regarding some of our fighters, these guys only get paid when they fight. Like there's some guys that they don't have really a second job or a backup plan, or maybe they're a little younger and stuff like that. So there's no MMA competition at all allowed in Canada, world, countrywide. They're holding it down for, I think, till November. So some of our guys are going over to the States, but then they're running into problems where, the guys that do have other obligations, if they go to the States, they're essentially taking a month off of their other obligations because they got to go there, come back, quarantine, all that stuff, just because of the travel, right? Even if they've done, 7 COVID tests, it doesn't matter, right? So, those guys, it's been tough for us to try to keep them motivated and positive and stuff like that. So we're just trying to line up as much competition as we can down the road and kind of cater their training towards those later dates. But it's there's really no answer for those guys, in my opinion.
Well, and I'm curious for you, Kelly, as well. Like your program, you have a humongous football program. that everyone's just knows is synonymous with modern day. Are you able to even start talking about scrimmages? Are you able to talk about anything with anybody about putting something on the map?
Unfortunately, no. So scrimmage dates are all TBD. But I mean, we do have our season of sport, which has been identified. So the first game of the season will be early in January.
Okay.
And, you know, under our rules, we have to have, you know, at least 14 days of practice with contact before your first game, and then 10 days before your first scrimmage. So we kind of have tentative dates, but we're still not in-person learning yet. So, you know, as the months kind of go by here, we'll see what changes. And, you know, if nothing does, then, you know, that might be a different conversation. So again, that's that uncertainty that we're kind of facing, but, you know, we're gearing up for those dates that our governing body CIF has given us, and we have a plan. We're ready for it. And if it changes, we'll deal with that when it happens. So, you know, in the meantime, everything's just skills based, you know, individual skills training, no contact, you know, social distance.
Incredible. Awesome.
Yeah. Well, guys, I think we're close to the end, or just even a little bit over for our hour. Can't thank you guys enough, right? And for the people who have joined us and who will watch this as well, they're going to lean on this conversation a little bit to be able to figure out their plan as you have kind of figured out your plan and continue to do so. There are so many others who are just trying to do it. And I think just listening to you all and even our connection with each other, just trying to figure it out, is going to make a huge difference for people. So thank you so much. And then hopefully we can hear back from you in the near future and see what that next sort of steps are for you guys and how things are going with everyone.
Thank you so much, guys, today. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you, gentlemen.
Have a great
Take
one.
care.
Absolutely.
Cheers, bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.